the Linden folks, and you had IBM and Cisco and Sun and I mean all the big tech companies and Google and Microsoft. And is any one of those companies going to say, all right, well, let's just concede that to somebody else, or do they actually want a hand in crafting what the future of collaboration is going to look like using these types of environments? And I think it's going to be the latter, and therefore, and I said this before, and I said this before when we originally created the Second Life Corporate Business Council a year prior to that. We were sitting around the table, and a couple of you have heard this anecdote, but I said, well, we all know what's going to happen, all these big companies. I said, we're all going to create our own environments, and we're going to have this battle in the market on who's going to be successful and who's not, and who's going to have more subscribers, and until eventually this war of attrition will occur, and we'll get down to one or two platforms that are sort of the dominance, and then the customers will hold us at gunpoint to make them interoperate. And I said, that's going to take 5 years, and it's going to take tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And I said, let's just skip to the end, and we'll all throw a bunch of money in the middle of the table and a bunch of engineers, and we'll buy the top 3 virtual world companies, and we'll throw some engineers at it, and we'll make it all interoperate, and we'll just call that the de facto standard, and then we'll get to the really profitable piece of adding value, adding applications on top of it. If we would have done this with the World Wide Web, we'd all still be arguing about the standards instead of actually using web pages. And everybody around the table said, yes, absolutely great idea. And then I don't remember if it was Google or Microsoft was sitting next to me, and he patted me on the back and he said, nice try, but there's no way that's going to happen. So unfortunately,
I've been following that a little bit, and I know they are now hung up on some patent intellectual property issues in just being able to each share with one another what it is that they know, what it is that they're doing and planning. So,
and the other thing, and I think one of the inherent things in the virtual world interoperability forum is this sort of genetic bias when you get in there towards the current metaphor. So the Second Life metaphor, or Proton Media, or Forterra, whatever version of that you like, which discounts in many ways the people who are coming at this from a completely different angle, like Trevor and Ian were doing over at Transmutable with Ogoglio, and Quack to a lesser degree because they are somewhat more like this. But the people that are taking more of a web services approach to this as opposed to proprietary standalone client, they have a whole different set of fish to fry than Polygon interchange formats and avatar portability and things like that.
Let me move on to another comment that you've made in that same blog. You talk about enterprise collaboration, and you refer to that as just stuttering along. And you describe a case where you were talking with a couple internet research group analysts, Peter Christie and John Katsaros, and you said, they pinned me up against the wall on a conference call once upon a time and asked me to elaborate on the differences between WebEx and Notes plus Same Time and a 3D immersive office. Each time I referenced an attribute of the virtual office, they had counterexamples of existing technologies doing the same job easier and faster. Do you think that still is the case?
Yes, I do, actually. I think there are things that we're doing right here. And for example, being able to see Terra and CyberGirl and Texas, and I know half the audience. I apologize. That's the serendipity piece that you don't really replicate. And you, Rob, you didn't know who was going to come in and populate the seats today. So that flies a little bit in the face of let's have a WebEx session and whomever shows up, because there's an a priori question of who do you invite, and if you don't know who the people are, you can't invite them. Whereas something like this is a little bit more of a broadcast mechanism. We're going to have this event, and anybody who wants to show up can show up, and then you have a serendipity opportunity. But a lot of things, if we're looking at slides, you don't want to look at imported textures on a prem in Second Life compared to something like a WebEx, or even more now the new Adobe Connect stuff, the Acrobat web services stuff. is just glorious, and it's much more flexible than anything we've been able to bolt on to a prim. So I'd much rather use that tool for the job than try to make this tool do that. I owned a Porsche before my kids were born, and I never tried to use it as a truck because that wasn't the type of tool that it was. And I think there's a logical fallacy in saying this is beautiful, and it is. Second Life is great, and it's a great tool for a few things. It's not a great tool for everything. And I think where the flaw comes in talking with analysts like Peter and John especially, because they've been through a lot of these cycles and they're very insightful and cutting. Every time I'd say, well, look at this opportunity for spatial audio, and they'd say, well, you can bolt that onto Skype. You can bolt that onto a number of things. There's codecs out there to do that. Look at web conferencing, and every time I'd bring up a use case, they'd bring up a counter use case. And quite frankly, if you have a particular thing that you want to do, I participated in a customer meeting first thing this morning, and the best tool for that was not a virtual world. It was the Adobe application, the WebEx competitor. But if I was going to have a user group, I'd have it in something like this. One of my new businesses has a roundtable component where you talk with subject matter experts and analysts, and it's using an environment like this so you can have this degree of intimacy. This somebody in the industry called it the magic of physical proximity.